Hello, hello, hello. Yes, you and you and you. This is Helen Thomas and the CDFM study group. All right, we're going to jump right into the continuation of review of CDFM Module 4, Competency 7, Life Cycle Sustainment is the topic. So we are continuing from understanding the development of our capability. We've done the testing of that capability. And now we need to sustain that capability throughout the life cycle of the operation. All right, this is Helen Thomas and the CDFM study group. If you have not already subscribed to our YouTube page, please, sir, please, ma'am, consider subscribing. Just click that button for me. It doesn't cost you anything, but it does promote the YouTube platform for the CDFM study group. All right, so life cycle sustainment. So we're going to look at the overview first. They always start with some definition. Sustainment is simple that I have a capability, I have an aircraft, it's built, it's placed in operation, but the life cycle of the aircraft may be 10 years. Now I need to sustain that aircraft for 10 years. So sustainment is looking at all the activities that are required to make sure that I keep that aircraft in operational capability. So the role of life cycle sustainment is looking over the life cycle of that program. So whenever they're coming up with an acquisition program, it's not just looking at how do we get a new aircraft, you're looking at the entire life cycle of that program to include from cradle to when you disperse and get rid of, not disperse, but get rid of that equipment. So life cycle sustainment planning is done at milestone B once you decide to go into a full-fledged acquisition program. So there's a few other key considerations. Product support, that's the logistics support that's necessary for that capability. Is it interoperable? Can I use parts from different modular open systems approach where I can get that supply, those parts from different entities? Life cycle costs. I want to make sure I have the cheapest cost, but I also want to make sure I'm getting exactly what is needed. So there's a bunch of definitions that's included there. Then some of the activities that goes into life cycle. So when you're looking at the acquisition program, you start with pre-acquisition before I actually build it. Then the second phase, which is the engineer manufacturing phase that begins at after milestone B, is acquisition phase. And then the third phase of a system development is sustainment. That's your operation and support that uses O&M funding 9 times out of 10. And so you got to do the initial operational capability. You did the full capability, and now you're actually sustaining the item. So some considerations that we need to look at. The initial capabilities document is the document that the JROC initially created to tell us this is the capability gap, and these are our recommendation to fill it. So throughout the acquisition system, that document is consistently updated. The next step is the capability development document. So they then put it in writing to say, this is how you are to develop the item with input from the program manager, those key performance measures, those key sustainment attributes that needs to be included. So the development document is next. And then before you go into production, there's a capability production document that's created. So these documents means the specificities specify authoritative and testable performance capabilities for that entire program. So everything started with the ICD that came from the JROC. And then with input from the program manager, it prioritizes the key performance parameters, that's the KPP, and the key systems attribute, that's the KSAs. So throughout the whole acquisition process, those are the key parameters that are followed to ensure that we end up with the product and verify that we have the right product and it's built correct, validate it's built correctly. So remember, in the acquisition phase, you started with material solution analysis, and under that, you had analysis of the alternative, where you receive guidance from the Director of Cost Assessment and Program Evaluation. Then the next phase is at milestone A, you go into the Technology Development Strategy Review, TDS. And throughout that process, you have Acquisition Program Baseline, the APB. That's the baseline of where everything should start with cost, schedule, and performance. And all of that will support moving into the acquisition strategy before we go into the acquisition phase of that process. So all of it, all these words, if you have the diagram in front of you, you're writing in, okay, this happened here. So you'll be able to see at milestone A, all these things are happening. Milestone B, all these things, technology development, and so forth and so forth. We talked about test and evaluation occurs throughout the process. When it happens at milestone A, it's called the TES. When it happens at milestone B, it's called the TEMP. Test and Evaluation Master Plan. So all of this is still their simulation. Systems Engineering Plan, we talked about. Life Cycle Sustainment Plan. So there's a plan, there's a strategy that always comes before you enter into a phase, before you move on to the next process. Then we look at performance-based life cycle support. So performance-based supports represents the latest evolution of that process. It is the purchase of a support, not necessarily an end item. So PBL is the purchase of support as an integrated affordable performance package designed to optimize system readiness and meet the requirements of that program. All right, let's highlight that. One of the most significant aspects of performance-based life cycle is the concept of negotiated agreement between the major stakeholders. So you got the program manager here that's trying to build a requirement for the user, and then you got the contractor on this side that's trying to provide it. So the program manager serves as that go-between, that liaison, that middle person to ensure that the user needs are met, as also you have the contractor that's providing the proper cost, schedule, and performance. So some methodologies, let's see, baseline, develop performance outcome, I think, let's see, product support. Yeah, see, all of these are definitions, and I'm not going over these. Performance-based agreement, and then they show the diagram of the project manager or program manager in the middle, the industry, the force fighter, and then the program manager is making sure that the specific requirements are met and is responsible for the contractor to meet those specific requirements. So acquisition comes from the contractor, sustainment to disposal, from cradle to grave. Just remember that term, from the beginning of the concept of that program to the end of it. Okay, these sections are getting shorter and shorter. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and continue with some special topics since this section is also short. So some special things you think about, as we talked about, that total systems approach. I'm not just buying an aircraft. I want to know, what do I put in the aircraft? I need, anytime a technological advances to go in the aircraft. Can the aircraft sustain our human systems integration process? What are some of the capabilities? If it get hit, how will I make sure that the human are protected? Occupational safety. So all of those is considered. So human systems integration is the next lesson. Talks about manpower, personnel, how many people do we need, the types of the skill sets, the abilities, skills that are needed, the type of training. So whenever you think of the people, it's real straightforward. What is the level of expertise do I need for people to work on these? Is the training going to be embedded? Both the sponsor and the program manager should give careful consideration and priority to use embedded training. And what is embedded training? Embedded training is training accomplished through the use of the system. Exactly what it says, right? Embedded by using it, I'm being trained on it. So if you know some of the equipment that we use, we don't get somebody to come in and talk us through it. They tell us how it works, and then we operate it. And then we learn as we grow. So embedded training is a term you will see in humans, the human system factors. All right. Environmental, we talked about this earlier. You got to consider your environmental, safety, occupational health, includes all of those things. Habitability. If I'm going to put a human being in it, I got to make sure it's temperature cooled. I got to make sure it's safety. There's a whole lot of things got to be able to do for safety, health, comfort, right? For our human being. Personal survivability. If I'm building an equipment, I got to make sure I reduce the risk of fratricide, detection, and the probability of being attacked. And if attacked, I want to make sure that I've put every measure in place to ensure the safety of those warfighters that are using that equipment. Some key considerations when the program manager is considering the design and development of system is minimal manpower. We want the least amount of human beings having to interact and use that particular equipment. So human factors engineering is the building of human factors that play an important role in each phase of the acquisition system. So to apply human factors engineering, you got to do your analysis, design it, test and evaluate it, then you put it into action, sustain it. So the role of integration. So integration is the key to successful human intervention strategy. So you want to optimize the system performance and determine the most efficient and effective and affordable design that trades supports both within the human elements. So we want to look at human factors and between the HSI elements and the system software. So the program manager should integrate, not only am I building this system to fill the capability gap, I need to consider the human factors in that process so that I can use the warfighter to operate the system, right? Because you can build this fancy system, and if you put the humans in there and the humans are not safe, then the system is still at fault. So all of that has to be considered in that process. So we want to refine our required capabilities to ensure that our humans' sustainment is integrated in that process. And then we look at IT, information technology, and look at net centricity. This term always comes up. So net centricity, and I'm gonna read it verbatim, relating to or representing the attributes of a robust, globally interconnected network environment, including infrastructure systems. So we're using technology in which data are shared in a timely and seamlessly among users. So when we use technology, we also got to make sure we have checks and balances in place as we're considering development of this aircraft so that the enemy cannot infiltrate or hack our system. So net centricity is that whole process of using that technological advances. Then they introduced the GIG, Global Information Grid, is the organizing and transforming of IT throughout the DoD, how they actually utilize the IT to do defense-related action. Global Information Grid. So the goal is to increase the net centricity of warfighters. I think there's a term. If I see it, I'm gonna bring it up because I remember it came up in the older book. So compliance, net centricity. Yeah, here we go. So transforming to a net centric environment requires 4 key features. Let me highlight these because I remember this always came up. So you have reach, richness, agility, and assurance. 2 R's, 2 A's. Reach can be operational reach. So an IKEA in turn is determined in terms of space and time, where distance is not a factor. So reach, how far, if I have technology, how far can I reach? Doesn't really consider distance, just how far, because technology. Richness, the quality, can be operationally defined in terms of total set of expertise, information, and/or capabilities that can be brought to bear within a unit of time. Agility can be operationally defined in terms of the number of effective adaptations that can be accomplished. So how can it be changed over time? And assurance can be defined as achieving expected levels of operational and system performance within a specified period of time. I want my capability to be interoperable, meaning I can get parts from different companies. I don't have to just only have one specific part that it uses, where if that breaks and I can't get it, then that system is inoperable. So interoperability is the ability of the system to and accept the same from other systems or units. Information support plan. So again, if I'm using IT, I'm going to have IT plan in place. All right, let's see. Developmental and submission review. Okay, I don't see anything there. Yeah, out of it is understanding the processes of how they do review, but always go through when you're studying, go through the parts of understanding and acquisition, what's happening before milestone A, with dealing with technology, dealing with human systems integration. When does it happen? Milestone A, B, C, throughout the process, when? So if you think about it, in the beginning, they're considering all of it. So 9 times out of 10, it's happening. Right, so as I was saying, making sure that you understand what's happening at each phase of the acquisition process. So electromagnetic spectrum considerations, the PM must consider when delivering capability to the warfighters or business domain. So he must understand the whole global system. Will the extended operational environmental electromagnetic produce harmful effects to the system? So is what already out there, is it going to impact the system that I'm building, that I've built? So all of those considerations must be considered. If you do have the book, on or about page 267, it does have the life cycle phases written out, and it tells you what's happening at each phase. I would definitely focus on that milestone. A, B, C goes into material solution analysis, technology maturation and risk reduction, engineering, manufacturing, development, production and deployment, and operations and support. And then if I have technology, I got to protect it, because I don't want everybody, right? If I'm Department of Defense and I have defense related technology, I want to have measures in place to protect my technology. So I think this is what I was thinking of. DNI, Director of National Intelligence. And so the overall efforts of IC, internal control, are administered by the Office of Director of National Intelligence and led by the DNI, including, okay, hold on. Let me read this correctly. Yeah. So you have a director. So the role in intelligence, as you're dealing with that, is controlled by the Director of National Intelligence. All right. Oversight, threat assessment support. The threat assessments community provides a range of support, because I want to include those entities if I'm developing a system and it can be impacted or it can be utilized by the enemy to defeat me, then I want to make sure I involve a threat assessment is done on that program. Okay, protocols. adversary impact. And then there was another contractors and personnel. Like if you have contractors working on your systems, you now need to make sure you have the right security measures in place. They have a certain level of things that they're allowed to do. And maybe there are some other things that they can't do because they're contractors that work for you. They're not government employees. So all of those things are considered in this process. All right, control DoD research. Yeah, a lot of it seems just like information. So I'm scanning, protect fielded systems. Program security instruction details the security arrangements that is necessary for that program. So it lays out, okay, here's your aircraft, and these are the security specific things that you must consider when you put this aircraft into operation. Excuse me. All right, so let's see where we have here. Then I think we have one more. Acquisition workforce. Is this part of it? Yeah, it's a short one. Let me see if I can go into it. Yeah, this is more of, okay, this is more of like an activity. Okay, so then the last part, acquisition business management. So this is more of, okay, so I'm not going to go over this. So this is more like questions, answers, kind of like the knowledge check that you see throughout the book. So I'm not going to go over those pieces with it. So I think that's the end, because these are more exercises that we don't go into. All right, so I've just gone through the last few sections, which is competency 7, 8, 9. And I think 10 is just capstone. Yeah, 7, 8, and 9. And so this concludes review of CDFM Module 4 and our last few sections of it. And so if you have not already subscribed to our YouTube page, please, sir, please, ma'am, considering subscribing. I would really appreciate it. This is Helen Thomas on the CDFM Study Group. I'll see you guys again next time.